Okay, fourth time is a charm on recording this video for you guys. I want to talk through checkpoint 2. There are 3 parts, so if there's one part that you're struggling with a little bit more, you might want to skip ahead in the video and listen to me talking about that particular part so that you're not having to listen to everything if it's not necessary. I do want to make sure that you guys know that you do need to fill out the whole checkpoint. It's going to help me see your thinking and know exactly where you're at with this when you get to part 3 and I'm actually scoring it. So fill everything out. If you leave a few things blank, I'll probably return it to you for you to complete. And I'll probably give you some feedback or some other resources to go to just to help you get through that section. All right, so checkpoint 2, heat transfer. This is going to be all about conduction, convection, and radiation. So part 1 is key terms and concepts. This will feel pretty familiar from checkpoint 1, where you also did key terms in the first part. So this one gives you a couple of ways to get that vocabulary or those key terms. The first is this video about heat. So if you click on the box, it's going to come up with a link to study jams for heat transfer. This YouTube video will open in a new tab and you will watch that video. That video is 3 minutes and 46 seconds long. So you'll have a chance to listen to what you need to know about conduction, convection, and radiation. Then, once you have either listened to the video or once you have scrolled through and read the article about how heat travels, which has the same information, then you're going to come to a couple of charts that ask you to compare and contrast the types of heat transfer. The first one asks you to compare how are conduction and convection and radiation alike. So what do they have in common? I'll give you a big hint. It has to do with heat transfer. So don't think too hard on this one. This answer is staring you in the face. The second chart is how are the 3 types of heat transfer different? So this is a contrast. So you'll tell how does conduction work differently, how does convection work differently, and how does radiation work differently. The last little bit of part 1 is an interactive. This is one that I have used for many, many years. So you'll click this link for heat transfer conduction. The website is wisconline.com. It's going to open up in a new tab, which I will show you. All right, so it's going to open here in this tab. And you are going to either be able to load the video that's already here. If you're having trouble with that, you can click the Flash version and you'll have to allow Flash to run. If that version works better on your Chromebook, that's another option. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of this. At each one of these slides, there's a video. You can pause the video, and at the top of that slide, there's a narration button. So it's going to show you the narration. It's going to show you what the narrator is saying on each slide. So this is the welcome slide. If I click next and pause the video, it's going to tell me exactly what the narrator is saying. So you can read through all of this, and this is going to help you fill in the blanks on the notes. The first line on this is heat transfers throughout our environment all the time. When you go back to checkpoint 2, the first line is heat blank throughout our environment all the time. So you know to fill in the word transfers because it's right here in the narration. The other fun thing about this is that you can click on these and it's going to give you more information. So instead of just going through a slideshow presentation or listening to a video of me like this, you actually are going to get to interact with the different parts and look at the different examples much more closely. I will give you a big hint. This interactive has some of the exact same examples as part 2, which you're actually going to use to write part 3. So you can come back and forth to this and see what the evidence is that conduction is happening, or the evidence that convection is happening, or that radiation is happening. And the evidence is all here to help you figure out those real world examples. All right, I'm going to move us back over to the checkpoints. So back to checkpoint 2, you'll fill in the blanks here. You can click narration at the top to see what he's saying, so you can help to fill in these blanks, and it also will help with spelling. You will click on the pictures and you're going to answer these questions. What is the definition of each of these, which you should have also heard in the video above or in the article. You will also put in those real world examples. So it's going to give you lots of examples and you're going to pick 1 or 2 of each to fill in. All right, part 2 is really the end of this thing. Part 2 is heat transfer scenes. I hate that we're not in class to do these together. This is one of my favorite ones to do because I would bring some of this stuff into class for us. And as we get later into the week, I may post some other videos showing you some of these types. So the first scene is always going to be the example. So this shows a person with a scarf over their face and a hat and a jacket. You can see their breath, and it asks you, what is the type of heat transfer? And then what evidence do you have for that? So we're going to look at the evidence first. The way that I know that heat is being transferred in this picture is, number 1, I can see that it's cold. There is snow on the ground in the background. Number 2, I can see the person is wearing warm clothing that we normally wear when it's cold. A coat, a scarf, a hat. I can also see breath in front of the person, which only happens when it's cold outside. I see warm breath that is heating the cold air in front of the person, and the air is moving. So that's what tells me that it's convection. Convection is the type of heat transfer that happens most often in liquids and in gases, so in air. So because of that, all of that evidence adds up to tell me that this is convection. I know that heat is being transferred because I know that it's colder around the person and the person is warmer, so the heat is trying to get out into the environment. And I also can see that air is moving, which tells me the specific type of heat transfer that I'm dealing with. So you'll scroll down through these. There's a hot chocolate or hot coffee, if you're a coffee person, example. Give me the evidence of heat transfer happening and what type. The third example, this is a pot of soup. So you're going to tell what is the evidence that heat transfer is happening and what type. A lot of these, you're going to notice that there's more than one type of heat transfer happening. So you can really pick more than one. And there's a good possibility that you're going to get it right if you can just give the evidence for how you know that heat is being transferred and then tell what type of transfer it is. So in this one, you could talk about the steam coming off of the food, the bubbles in the soup. You could talk about the metal spoon. So there's several different parts of this one picture that you could focus on for your explanation. Scene 4 is a geyser or a hot spring. Scene 5 is eggs boiling in some water in a pot on the stove. Scene 6 is a wood stove. So this is an old-timey wood-burning stove. You can actually cook on the tops of these. They're little burners. So this was what we used before we had gas and electric stoves. Scene 7 is a highway. My kids are in the background on the highway. This is a highway in the summertime, and you can see the waves of heat coming up off the road here. And this is some kind of either an 18-wheeler or an RV camper in the background. Scene 8 is this lovely woman in curlers putting some brownies into the oven. So give some evidence here and tell what type of heat transfer is happening. Scene 9 is melting ice cream with some pecans in it. Today would have been such a good day for ice cream. I didn't have any. And then scene 10 are these cute little baby chicks. And there's a heating lamp up there. So you can talk about heat transfer there. All right, that's part 2. If you hung out with me the whole time, now it's time to talk about part 3. So part 3 is what I'm actually going to score. I'm scoring this on selection of evidence, the same thing that we focused on in checkpoint 1. So we're really working on getting this one cog skill up higher than whatever it was when you were scored on this before. Selection of evidence is all about giving evidence that actually is related to your claim or to what you're saying, the question that you're answering. All right, so we'll look at the example here. This was from scene 1. So scene 1 was the person with the scarf and hat and coat. And this is the example. It includes the definition of the type of heat transfer that I'm talking about and gives 2 pieces of evidence from the example. So scene 1 is an example of convection. Convection is a type of heat transfer that occurs in gases and liquids where warmer, less dense particles rise and cooler, more dense particles sink. In the scene, the man is breathing out warm air, which is seen because you can see the water vapor or breath in front of his mask. You know it is cold because of how the man is wearing a coat and scarf. As he breathes out warm air, the warm air rises and colder air takes its place. So in this example paragraph, you can see that first they include a definition. Convection is ... This comes straight from the interactive that you did. You can get those definitions. You typed them in the box above in part 1. So you can scroll back up and get that definition. And then it also gives 2 pieces of evidence. In the scene, the man is breathing out warm air. So you can see the water vapor. You know it is cold because the man is wearing a coat and scarf. There's 2 pieces of evidence. And went even further and said, as he breathes out warm air, the warm air rises and colder air takes its place. So now I'm getting into how does that connect to the type of heat transfer that we chose, which was convection. So this is very close to a level 4 explanation. I would probably score this one out of 4 because it meets those criteria and makes a connection between the evidence and that type of heat transfer. So your job is to go back to part 2 and pick one example of conduction, one example of convection, and one example of radiation. So conduction, convection, radiation. Pick one example of each, and you're going to follow this format where you define the type of transfer, give 2 pieces of evidence, and then make that connection. That's how to get this cog skill up to a 4. The really great news about this is if you score a 4 in this project, I'm going to go back and replace that score in your previous work. So whatever you score in this project, if it's higher than what you've done before, it's going to boost your overall score for the year. So your average is going to go up if you can follow these guidelines. If you have questions while you're working, please contact me. You can send me a text message or you can give me a phone call. My phone number is in my email signature, so anything that I've sent you, you can go and look that up. You can also make a private comment in Google Classroom. So if you go to where you opened this assignment, there's a place for you to type a private comment to me, and I see that and I can respond. And it's right beside the work that you're doing, so it's easy for you to look at that as you're working. You can also send me an email and we can schedule a time to have a one-on-one session where we are working on your checkpoint 2 together and answering questions and talking about the examples. So if any of those sounds like a good deal for you, please get a hold of me. I would love to hear your voice, help you out, and just catch up on what's going on in your life outside of the world of checkpoint 2 for this project. So I'm going to post this video and I'll see you guys Wednesday at 2:05 if you have questions about this checkpoint.
Sorry for being in the video.